The role of Amherstburg in the Underground Railroad story is as a crossing point. Amherstburg is located where Lake Erie narrows and becomes the Detroit River. And this became the first place that people who were fleeing slavery in the United States could see the other side was close enough to cross. And if they felt threatened or if they were being followed, they would cross here rather than go on to cross at Detroit or Sandwich.
When they arrived here, I'm told, and let's say my ancestors came across on an abolitionist boat called the Pearl. Once they left North Carolina, they went to Indiana. They stayed with the Quaker abolitionists after Mary Stout. Then they made their way on a not a slave ship. It would be a abolitionist ship, a freedom ship, called the Pearl, captained by Mr. Sloan. They came to Amherstburg. It wasn't as the water wasn't as deep as it is now with the big ocean liners going through. So they would make their way up onto the shore, and I'm told that they would literally get on the shore, kiss the ground, and thank the good Lord that they were free.
When the enslaved people came here, there were French, English. There were a lot of Irish people here, and they all tried to get along.
People were coming in the 1700s when there was still slavery in Canada, and people were coming in after 1850. The huge numbers of people began to come after the U.S. passed the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850. When they arrived here, they would have found a small town, and let's assume it's after slavery has ended here, but even if it was before, they would be free when they got here. The first thing they would find, or would be told, was that they had all the same legal rights as anybody else who came here from Europe. The governor gave all of the same rights, and a person was considered free once they arrived. And they could vote, and they could run for office. They could own property.
They left the South to find a better way of life, and when they came to Canada, they found a better way of life. Even though it wasn't perfect, and it wasn't, they found a better life. They didn't have to worry about waking up and seeing a dead man hanging in a tree that had been tarred and feathered, or they didn't have to worry about somebody burning a cross on their lawn. They didn't have to worry about people coming in and bombing them and doing horrific things because of the color of a person's skin.
When they came here, they landed in Amherstburg. They stayed there a year, but then they wanted to find a place more inland. They were really, my great-great-grandfather was worried about slave catchers coming and taking him back.
There were places when the bounty hunters would come, there was a hole in the floor where they could go down under, crawl on their bellies, and go to a safer place where there was like a 4-foot drop. And they would lock the doors. And how they knew that the bounty hunter was in the area, because there was a bell. As soon as one was seen in the area, one started ringing a bell. And each person that heard that bell rang another bell till there were bells ringing. So anywhere you went, you heard the bells ringing, you absolutely knew. Time to hide.
People settled in the town if they felt safe enough. If they weren't fleeing slave catchers, they would settle here. There were many who crossed and came here who were free already in the north, but to escape the kidnapping that was going on, they packed up their families and brought them here. So they would feel safe settling in Amherstburg and probably built the church that we have here.
And that's why we have a lot of people of color going towards east and up higher into the northern part of Ontario because of that very reason. They had to get away from the river. Once they got away from the river, they were fine. They felt safer.
So back at that time, if you got this far inland from Amherstburg, it would be a whole, or Windsor, it would be a whole day's ride by horseback so they could get warm. So he came to this area, which was Refugee Home Society area, and it was woodland and trees on all sides. And the Refugee Home Society was founded by abolitionist sympathizers, and they would buy up Crown land, because you remember this was before Canada was a country. Canada didn't become a country till 1867, you know, and so they'd buy up this crown land and then sell it back on easy terms to the pioneer Canadians, the freedom seekers that were trying to start a new life here in Canada, and who had literally ran up on that perilous Underground Railroad journey.
After the War of 1812, there was a lot of word being spread about black people in Canada, and we saw people who weren't slaves and what that meant. I think every slave knew what it was to be free. I mean, they saw white people and they saw they could do what they wanted and keep their families together and keep their earnings and all of those kinds of things. So those would be the things they'd be looking forward to in coming here, and they would find those things. I mean, they would find some hostility, they would find prejudice, but they had the right to work and keep their earnings and not lose their children being sold off from them.
This pin up here, which for our American visitors is like the Congressional Medal of Freedom or whatever. But the model of the Order of Canada is Desiderantes Meliorem Patrium, Latin for we desire a better country. And what we try to do here at the historic site is to bring out the fact that even though there's room for improvement, there's an old saying about democracy. It may not be the best form of government, but show me a better. Being here 8 generations, we feel that there's no better country in the world for a visible minority to live than in Canada.
In another part of my family, my great-grandfather was a slave in Maryland. And my dad's sister asked her father, who was the son of this slave, former slave, did your father ever tell you anything about it? Never. It was behind them, forgotten, and they didn't want to put their children through those images and those thoughts. So very often slave stories were not handed down because people wanted to shake the dust off their shoes and get on with having their families and enjoying their freedom.
If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home, tell all my friends I'm coming to, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me